Okay, it's that time of the year again. Tomorrow, Apple is going to release the latest iPhone 17 Pro Max. Price tag estimated around $1,199. Now, do you know how many hours the average American has to work just to afford it? It's actually around 33 hours at the national average wage. But for many, it's not 33, it's closer to 40 hours, a full week of life at a soul-crushing job, traded for a rectangle of glass. That's the hidden cost that nobody seems to be talking about. The price isn't dollars, it's hours. It's pieces of your life sold off in exchange for a slightly shinier gadget. And before anyone asks, I'm not here to argue iPhone versus Android. Let's not kid ourselves. The latest Samsung Ultra or Google Pixel isn't a charity case either. They're all status symbols wrapped in shiny marketing. The problem here, it isn't Apple. The problem is us. The way we trade our finite lives for tiny upgrades we barely notice after a week. Now, let's do the math. The new iPhone 17 Pro Max, it costs $1,199. Now, again, that's like almost 40 hours of work. Now, think about it. It's an entire week of your life. 5 mornings of dragging yourself out of bed when you don't want to. 5 commutes on overcrowded trains or traffic-choked highways. 5 days of sitting in meetings that could have been emails. All of it just to buy an iPhone. And here's the kicker. Those 40 hours aren't even real hours. That's before taxes, before rent, before groceries. In reality, you'll need even more time just to make it balance out. So what are we actually buying here? Is the new iPhone camera worth a week of your existence? Is a slightly brighter screen worth the hours you could have spent with your kids, your partner, your friends, or simply alone, doing something that you actually care about? You see, this is what wage slavery does. It makes us blind to the real currency of life, time. Money is just a proxy. What we're actually spending is hours we'll never get back. Now, I remember my own weekends after a long week of work. I wasn't living, I was recovering. Too drained to create, too tired to even dream. Saturday morning, walks with my dog, a takeout dinner, a movie, then back to the grind. That's all work leaves me with. And yet, when the new iPhone dropped, I still felt the pull, the hype, that little whisper, maybe this will make things better. But the truth is, it never does. The truth is simple. You don't buy an iPhone with money. You buy it with your life. And here's the brutal truth that nobody really wants to say out loud. Nobody needs the latest iPhone. But year after year, millions of people convince themselves they do. Now, why is that? Because the phone isn't just a phone. It's a badge, a silent signal that you belong. You see it at work, in school, on the subway. We're constantly quietly judged by the rectangle in our hands. Not its utility, not how it helps us live, but what it says about us. Now, I said this earlier, I'm not here to argue iPhone versus Android because, like I said, let's not kid ourselves. Those other smartphones are just as expensive. They're all just status symbols. The problem here, again, it's not Apple. The problem is us, the way we trade our lives for these tiny upgrades that we barely notice after a week. And that's the game. Phones aren't sold as tools, they're sold as salvation, the key to status, the proof you're not falling behind. And it sort of reminds me of the pyramids. I keep talking about these pyramids. Generations spent their lives stacking stones for someone else's glory. And today we stack hours at jobs we hate for someone else's profit, then hand over the paycheck for a product that makes us feel important, but only for a moment. Work made us bury our own dreams, and in the void, we chase validation in shiny objects. A new phone, a new car, a slightly bigger TV. The system doesn't care what it is, as long as you keep buying, as long as you keep working. Now, the tragedy is this. No matter how advanced the iPhone gets, it can't get you back the years you sold to pay for it. It can't restore the passion work stripped away. It only distracts you from noticing how much you've lost. So every September, the ritual begins. The lights dim. A man in black shirt steps onto a stage and the crowd erupts as a prophet just walked in. The sermon begins. Words like innovation, magical, revolutionary. The audience nods, claps, cheers. The latest iPhone is unveiled as though it's a miracle. But if you look closer, what's really changed? A slightly better camera, a processor so fast that makes no difference in your daily life, a new finish that nobody notices until once you put on a case. Even the influencers who review these phones look bored, Their voices flatter, their smiles strained. They're forced to say, this is the best iPhone yet, while secretly knowing it's just last year's model. And yet, we still feel the pull. Why? Because marketing has taught us that without the latest device, we're just outdated, behind, left out of the future. The illusion is very powerful. If you don't upgrade, you don't belong. This is no accident. Companies spend billions creating that hunger. It's not about the phone. It's about the fear of missing out, the fear of being invisible. And it works because deep down, we want to believe that a new device can change our lives. That if we just get the next upgrade, we'll finally feel different, more connected, more alive. But it never happens. The rush fades in a week. And then you're left with the same job, the same bills, the same exhaustion. Only now you've traded another week of your life for a false sense of progress. It's the same performance I've seen in corporate offices. Posters saying, we're family. Cake parties after layoffs. Slogans about people first. It's all theater. Just like the keynote, just like the commercials, the product is secondary. What really matters is keeping you in the cycle. Because if you stop believing in the illusion, if you realize that you already had enough, the machine would just collapse, and they can't allow that. So here's the truth that nobody says out loud. You don't buy an iPhone with money. You buy it with your life. Those 40 hours you worked, they weren't just numbers on a paycheck. They were mornings when your alarm ripped you out of your sleep. Hours staring at a screen that made your soul feel smaller. Evenings too, tired to cook, too drained to dream. That's the invisible trade. Every dollar you hand over is a fragment of your humanity, shaved off by a system that convinces you this is normal. And it's not just you. Just look deeper. The phone in your hand was built on the lives of others. The cobalt in its battery, mined by children in Congo. The assembly lines in China where workers live in dorms and collapse from exhaustion. Their hours, their lives, their dreams fused into the glass that you tap. We like to think of the pyramids as relics of ancient slavery, but just look around. We're still building pyramids today. Only now they're corporate pyramids. Instead of stacking stones, we stack hours. Instead of gods, we worship brands. And the pharaohs of our age don't wear crowns. They wear designer sneakers and cash out stock options. I felt this once at an office job. They brought out cake to celebrate layoffs. I imagined that. People losing their livelihood while others ate sugar to pretend everything was fine. That's when it hit me. Corporations don't care about people. They care about profit. And our phones, our gadgets, our little upgrades, they're just part of the same illusion. A ritual to keep us distracted while the system feeds on our time. Work stripped away my spirit piece by piece. And the iPhone cycle is just another extension of that same theft. You work, you buy, you numb yourself, and then you do it again. That's the real cost of an upgrade. It's not $11.99, but the slow erosion of who you are. And the cost doesn't end with your hours. Every iPhone is made from materials ripped out of the earth. According to environmental reports, producing just one smartphone requires around 34 kilograms of raw materials and releases about 55 kilograms of carbon emissions. That's before it even reaches your hand. Just think about this. By the time you unbox it, the phone has already left scars on the planet and on the people who mined it. Cobalt dug by kids in Congo. Rare earth minerals from strip-mined landscapes in Asia. the assembly lines where exhaustion is normal, and suicide nets are strung beneath windows because the pressure to produce is unbearable. Now, I don't want to talk about the environment because I have my own thoughts about it, but the reason I do mention the environment is because Apple and other companies like it, they often like to say that they care about the environment. So it makes sense that I criticize them for it. Because the cost, it isn't just your hours, it's everybody it affects. Invisible lives bent and broken so you can scroll Instagram a little bit faster. And yet somehow we're sold the idea that iPhone is freedom. The commercials show young creators traveling the world, filming cinematic clips, living wild, untethered lives. But here's the irony. The phone doesn't set you free. It tethers you tighter. It's the leash we carry willingly in our pockets. The office email that pings on vacation. The Slack notification that interrupts dinner. The unspoken rule that you're always rechargeable, always available, always working, even when you're off the clock. The smartphone was supposed to liberate us. Instead, it turned work into something we can never escape. Now, I remember writing in my journal one weekend, and I was just exhausted, staring at my phone, waiting for Monday. And it hit me. Even in my so-called free time, I wasn't free because work had invaded every corner of my life. The phone wasn't a tool, it was a reminder, a chain. And still, we line up every year to buy the next one. Not because it will make life better, but because the system has trained us to believe it's progress. But what kind of progress is it when every upgrade leaves us more exhausted, more disconnected, and more enslaved? Now, before anyone calls me out, yes, I do own an iPhone. Yes, there is an Apple computer behind me right now. I am not immune to the hype. This isn't about pretending that I'm better than you. It's about asking the question that nobody asks when a new iPhone drops. Is it worth the hours of your life you'll never get back? Because here's the thing, for what most of us use our phones for, like texting, calls, browsing photos, you can get pretty much 99% of the same experience from a model that's 2 years old or even older. But the marketing machine doesn't want you to think that way. They want you restless, unsatisfied, hungry for the next release. And yet, there is another way to see it. What if instead of trading 40 hours of your life for a rectangle, you invested those hours in yourself, into learning a skill, building something of your own, starting the side project you've been putting off? That's the real upgrade, not the iPhone 17 Pro Max. I've fallen into this trap myself so many times, convincing myself that I needed that new iPhone camera or the latest gadget to move forward. But every time I learned the same lesson. The tools aren't the change, you are. The upgrade is what you do with what you already have. And if you think about it, that's terrifying for the system. Because the moment you realize that you don't need the latest iPhone, you start to realize something even bigger. Maybe you don't need the job that funds it either. Maybe the entire cycle, work, consume, repeat, isn't progress at all. It's the trap. So, tomorrow, when the new iPhone headlines flood your feed, I want you to pause, not to argue Android versus Apple, not to mock the people lining up at the Apple store, but to ask yourself, how many hours of my life am I willing to trade for this? And is there something better I can do with them? So, here's the takeaway. The real price of an iPhone isn't $1,199. It's a week of your life, a week of mornings you didn't want to wake up, a week of hours you never get back. And the tragedy is, most people don't even think about it. They'll line up, swipe the card, and then go back to work to start the cycle all over again. We call this progress, but it feels like a trap. Don't waste your life chasing the next shiny rectangle. Invest those hours into something that matters, into yourself, into building a life that's actually yours. Because the real upgrade, it isn't in the pockets, it is in you. Don't waste your life chasing the next shiny rectangle. Invest your hours into something that matters. Build your own dream before you spend another decade building someone else's. As always, thank you for listening. Do me a favor and tap that like button to show your support. Subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. Until next time, stay hungry, relentless, and strong in your journey of escaping wage slavery. Bye.